Welcome to Truth Bombs Podcast. Did she really say that? You're joined together today by my co-host,
Heidi Muma.
And I'm Chef Katrina, and we're here to talk real female business education. And what the heck do we mean by that? Honestly, what we've discovered for women is that we have a different approach to business, and we know this, but it almost seems like it's an intangible business education and idea.
Yeah.
And so what we really started looking at and talking with women around was, how do you build a business as a woman that has a lot of plates spinning? Right, has a lot going on. And so we started this conversation just before we jumped onto this podcast, really about mentorship and how valuable mentorship is. And you kind of brought up a story that you were just listening to, of course, on social media, because that's where we all start with the good conversation. So let's dive in there.
Well, I love I always get good ideas from, scrolling through things and what catches my attention. I'm just like, so this was an Instagram reel from Dave Ramsey, and you either love him or you hate him. It's irrelevant. But anyhow, he was mentoring a guy called in who is a single dad to two young boys, and he's working at a job. He's making $13.50 an hour.
Is this the dad making that?
The dad is making $13.50 an hour. And he's wondering, it's like, how do I ever get ahead? How do I pay off my debt when I'm barely making a living? And it was like, and Dave Ramsey was like, he's like, the first thing you need to do is just take care of your food, and your housing.
Right.
Those are your priorities. You worry about debt later on. He was like, that may get you by in the moment. He goes, but you have to talk about, what are you doing for the future? How are you ever going to get out of this? Because at $13.50 an hour, you're not gonna. And so he talked to him. He goes like, are you in a good church? And he's like, yeah, I'm in a phenomenal church. And he's like, surround yourself with men who are successful in something that interests you, something that you could see yourself doing. So surround yourself and help and ask them to guide you and how they got to their success. And it made me just think about, it's like, how valuable, and we often talk about that apprentice position. Yep. Where people's like, where the old time, like how we used to learn jobs was through apprenticeship and mentorship, and people would come around you and teach you how to do what they're already successfully doing.
Yeah. And I think what's interesting though is, like, when I look throughout historical television shows, read through books and references, the guys were always mentoring the guys, right? And it didn't matter whether it was in business, whether it was in life, it was in relationships, it was around sex, sports, all of it. I mean, guys definitely went and experienced life more to round out who they were.
Yeah.
Right? They always talked about men being able to go and sow their seeds before they settled down, right? and it was acceptable for the men to do it, but not so much for the women to do it. And a lot of what we were dealing with as women, we kind of kept behind the closed doors. We talked in small groups, but we didn't actively go out and find women that were successful in business. It wasn't really acceptable to sit down with a successful woman, because there were few and far between, to be honest.
Yeah. Well, you think about it, it's like, I was like, how, like, the girls learn to do what they did learn to do is, like, the sew in circles, and where the girls learned the skills that they were going to use later in life. Now, it looks different than it is in a business world, because we think of those skills as irrelevant. But they were the skills that they were going to be using.
Yeah.
And it's like, and they learned the crafts that they were going to be doing. So even though it's like, it looks different, it was the same activity of what an apprenticeship would be.
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting when you talk about, what does a woman in business look like, right? And I just know that when I first started, there was a quote that was said in the very beginning. I remember just this really, really powerfully. It's like, find somebody that has what you want, do what they do, and then you'll get what they got. Right? So the idea was to mirror or be mentored by somebody that had the lifestyle that you wanted.
Right.
Right? And so as I was in the world and I stepped into the world of entrepreneurship, that kind of always stuck with me. And when I looked at who had things that I wanted, the lifestyle I wanted, the freedom I wanted, it was still predominantly men.
Yeah.
It wasn't women going out there and showing you, hey, this is how I did this, being a mom, a wife, and everything else. Like, those women were few and far between, and they weren't necessarily on the internet or in this realm. They were running their business. They were in the trenches of what they were doing, right? So what I always found interesting is that when I was going through the world of entrepreneurship, and as I was going through businesses and working with, the idea of a female mentor was always a turnoff for me.
Well,
Because I never felt like I was going to learn anything differently from a female business owner than I was going to learn from a male business owner. Like they mirrored each other.
They mirrored each other. They weren't teaching anything different.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, so it's like when you think about it, you look at somebody who it's like, that's what I want. Well, so many of the females in that who outwardly looked like they had all the success, they were miserable. More often than not, they were miserable, and it's like they weren't happy, they were overwhelmed, and for me, they weren't a central part of their children's lives.
Right.
They were the mom who was out there working 90 hours a week, 80, 90 hours a week. They were missing the soccer games. They were missing the ballet recitals. And it's like, and that wasn't what I wanted.
Yeah, and it wasn't what I wanted. And,
right.
and I was like, well, where are these women?
Yeah.
Where are the women that are successfully balanced life and business? And right now, honestly, there are a few women out there that are starting to prove this conversation completely irrelevant, because they are starting to show up with how to balance life and business and do it more holistically.
Yeah.
But they're still few and far between.
Yeah.
So
they're the anomaly.
Yeah. So when you talk about, go find females that are successfully building the business in the style of being a woman, right? And what I mean by that is that they're honoring their female hormonal cycle. They understand the hormonal journey that we are on as women, from both the pre-menstrual, menstrual, perimenopausal to postmenopausal. Like, that journey as a woman is very unique to us as women, and we really haven't addressed that as how this affects us with our businesses, with our families, with our finances, because it's not been a common conversation.
No.
And we don't talk about the emotions of being a woman. And I think it's interesting when you say, go find successful men, and as men, they can sit there. Their men are very openly talk about just about everything they deal with, to be honest, from my perspective. And I could be totally wrong. The men that are listening to this, you could be like, hey, we don't talk about crap. Well, that's not necessarily my perception. And I think with a lot of women, when we get together, there are still conversations we don't bring up. There are still things we timidly walk around with each other.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily say, hey, how are your hormones doing today? Right.
Right.
We don't typically say, hey, what is your emotional stress level this week?
How much energy do you actually have versus perception?
Yeah. We look at, she's doing better than me, I'm doing better. But I know when I hear from celebrities and when I hear from successful business women, when you get them behind closed doors and you have a real authentic conversation with them, they still feel like a fraud. They still feel like a failure. And a lot of that, I think, for all of us women, is that there's this sense of being incomplete in how we're living our lives.
Yeah, we don't want to, it's hard because I feel like there's a lot of expectations on women. Yeah. Especially it's like raising your kids, everybody has an opinion. And even like marriages, everybody has an opinion. And it's like, social media has definitely been a hindrance in, because I do remember getting together with and I was very fortunate when I first got married. I was in a group of ladies that we were all on the same stage, and we did have some real conversations. And I think, but that's unfortunately from what I've heard from other women, that was a unique experience. Yeah.
You're an anomaly.
And then, I like being an anomaly. Yeah, I'm good with that. Yep. But often we don't. And I think our culturally, we also, it's like, you raise your kids the way you raise your kids. I raise my kids, like, keep out of my parenting. And which I think is a detriment. And it's like, it's a detriment in that, and it's a detriment in our business. Yeah. Because it's like, the more, when we're open to other people's input, when we're open to maybe an idea might work a little differently than what I'm doing at the moment. And I think when I was open to other people's insight into my life, into my kids, into my marriage, it was much more, it flourished a lot. It was just like, wow, that actually worked. And I was like, and I never would have thought of that if another lady hadn't pointed it out to me.
Yeah. And I think it's so critical that we support each other as women. I remember this conversation the other day I was having with a friend of mine, and she's like, if we could stop criticizing each other as women and understand how much we need each other's support, what would that look like in the world of business? Right?
Because we have blind spots that you don't even know are, it's like if somebody from the outside looking in can clearly see something that we just walk right by.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting when we talk about going back to the conversation that started all this, what is, mentorship? Where are the women that we can sit down with and say, okay, how are you balancing this? What are you learning that I don't have access to? And one of the things that I find really interesting is I've never been one to be in a training for an industry specific. Mm-hmm. So when I first got started as an entrepreneur, I was in the world of network marketing. So I was in this bubble, this like blind spot tunnel, where everybody and everything I was talking and learning from was this one message, one training, one marketing, one voice, one everything. And what I felt was like, I'm missing something, right? Like there's more to this conversation than I'm being told. So I actually started veering out and starting talking to other women in different businesses. Like I had a good friend that was in investment real estate. So she was flipping homes with her husband. So I got a different perspective. I actually got to speak to her crowd. Right? I actually got to teach marketing to them, and they have a different perspective of it, right? I started talking to restaurant owners because they have a different perspective of it. I started talking to, CPAs, accountants, lawyers. I started talking to women in different industries because what I discovered was that, in each industry, there's something unique that women do. Mm-hmm. That if another industry learned about it or another training field learned about it, it would totally propel that woman forward in business and give her the peace of mind and grace to move forward. Yeah. That's why one of the big things we talk about inside the academy is how, each woman in business that comes in offers a key to unlock another woman because their experiences, like we've been talking about, provide a unique look at what is it to be a business owner, be a career woman, and yet find that balance. What do we need to start sharing more of, right? If I'm looking for a woman that I want to model, if there is a female entrepreneur out there that, has what I want, doing what I'm doing so I can have that type of lifestyle, that's who I'm drawn to. And, I've been searching, I kid you not, like I look for, I've seen a lot of the female business owners out there. There's some amazing training by these women. I've no doubt. I haven't bought every course out there, nor do I want to, because after a while, after 15 years in this industry, I feel like a lot of it's just the repeat of what's already been out there. It's just being said by a woman.
Yeah, regurgitation.
And it's not a bad thing, but the thing for me, what I started to look for was what's missing for us as women. And mentorship for women, I truly believe we need to start looking for, finding, and supporting more women as females. There is a unique conversation. I was talking with a very successful financial woman, and she was talking about one of her clients, and she goes, what's interesting is when I have male clients, I can take them down this path. But when I have a female client that I'm working with in their business and finances, I actually have to take them down a whole different path because their mindset, their belief system, everything we've dealt with as women needs a different gentleness and a different perspective to honor us and what we deal with on a day-to-day basis, both hormonally, emotionally, physically, mentally. So it's really fascinating that in these different crevices, we're starting to see the overlap of how unique women are in business and the uniqueness that needs to come place, and it needs to come from a place of compassion from another woman. I truly believe that in our business world, women need and should be, I will say the two words I don't really like a lot, need and should, get mentorship from women in business. It is a critical element, and at the same time, those high women that have been building these businesses are well connected to the men.
Yeah.
I have tons of male business, mentors and everything else like that. I'm still connected and I still can use them as a valuable source.
Definitely.
But it's bringing back the information to women in an approach that gets what they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis that men don't understand because they don't live hormonally as a woman.
And they don't interact in the world the same way with all the different aspects that are a part of a woman's life the same way a woman does.
Yeah, which is one of the reasons why when we looked at what we were building with Truth Mom Academy, we wanted it to be a female-centered business, heart-centered. We wanted to be able to have real conversations with women. We had to take it offline first and foremost. We had to provide a safe place to have this conversation because we know there's going to be emotion stirred up. We have a lot of baggage as women, whether real or unreal or known or unknown. And so it took something to really sit with everything I've learned over the last 15 years, all the business education I've learned, all the financial education I learned, and say, okay, how does this need to get presented, and what can we do to ensure that women successfully build businesses, maintain that business for future generations, so that we have access to more financial funding, more assets and resources as women, and we're not burning out trying to build our businesses how the men tell us we should be building our business.
Right.
So I think it's a really interesting thing. If you are a female entrepreneur, I do highly recommend connecting with other women in different industries. If you are a network marketer, go find somebody that's in a whole different industry and talk to them. Talk to the banker, talk to the real estate agent, you will find that when you get out of your own bubble and start talking to other women, go talk to women that are in a different sport, in a different activity. You will learn so much more about yourself because we each come at life a little different. And I always say, like we say, inside of the academy, each woman holds the key to unlocking another woman.
Yep.
So with that, we're wrapping up today's podcast. We're going to do a little bit shorter version moving forward. If you're listening to us on any of our platforms and you love what we're talking about and you want to support us, definitely give us a 5-star. Share with your girlfriends. We love, don't we like that?
Absolutely.
We love when we girlfriends share with other girlfriends something they find valuable and important. And we will continue to bring forth the best of us. We're going to start bringing back our special guests as we continue to interview amazing women in different industries that can bring something valuable to you. So you never know what we're going to say on Did She Really Say That?
No, things just drop out of our mouths sometimes.
All the time.
You never know. It's not planned.
Nope.
It just happens.
Yep. So we hope you guys are having a phenomenal day. And again, follow us, like us. If you want to learn more about the Truth Bomb Academy, head over to truthbombmarketing.com and join us inside this extraordinary adventure of being a female entrepreneur. We'll see you on the inside.